All righty, everybody. Hey, welcome to Note Night in America. Glad to have you here. It is hard to believe that we are 1 week away from a 12th of the year done already. I mean, it is crazy to think it is the 22nd of January as they air this live. For those that are joining us here on Zoom and also watching live on YouTube, or if you're watching the replay, hey, we are glad to have you watch this replay as well and listen to it. Make sure you comment and let us know you're there. Just a crazy couple of weeks since the end of the year and the beginning of the year's kicked off, but we are rocking and rolling along. I don't know about you guys, but things are rocking and happening in our worlds. And if you're not attracting the type of success, the type of deal flow, the type of capital, the type of relations you have, it's probably because that number one tool, your number one resource, that melon inside your head is probably a little bit off. And so I've had this actual Note Night in America planned for about 2 months now. It delayed a week because of the weather last week, but we are honored to have our special guest here who is just an absolutely law of attraction expert. She's the host of the Inner Power Entrepreneur podcast, a podcaster, best-selling author, and just a badass when it comes to everything that she does. And I'm honored to have Dr. Amanda Barrientez join us here on Note Night in America tonight. And Dr. Amanda and I met last year, actually, when I was up in Newport, Rhode Island with Chris Prefontaine and his Wicked Smart community, and just absolutely loved what she was sharing. I've been listening to her podcast and taking her 7-day stuff. And we had her on the Note Closure show a few months ago. It came out right in December. But I really think that what she teaches and what she talks about and what she helps manifest, not only does she talk about it, but she actually did it for herself. And I don't want to take any thunder away from her amazing story that she can share with you guys. But I definitely want you to buckle in, get rid of the distractions, grab you a piece of paper, a beverage, and be prepared to ask questions and interact with us. But what is going on, Dr. Amanda? How you doing tonight?
Scott, I'm so excited to hang out with you and your crew tonight.
Yeah, I've been excited about this as well. We had to postpone a little week, but hey, we are here. We are rocking. We got folks joining us on YouTube already. Feel free if you're watching live on the tube to comment. Let me know where you're from, what you're doing. Same thing here on Zoom. I see John. I see a few other folks viewing in here as well for you. But yeah, how's your year going? You're rocking and rolling, kicking ass and taking names?
Oh yeah, always. Yeah, always. And it's amazing that we scheduled this a while ago to talk about time optimization because it's been such a potent and important topic in my community. It's like, in order to attract freedom, you have to focus on time mastery, not management, because you can't manage your time. It's about mastering yourself. So yeah, I'd say that that's been one of the most hot topics in my community this year already.
Yeah, no, it's from everybody I see. I think we all feel like the world is speeding up and getting faster, even though we'd like it to slow down. I was cracking up at the holidays around my nephew, and he's like, "Oh, you're so bored. It's so boring." I'm like, kid, you better enjoy this while it drags out because it is not slow. It is getting faster by the day out there. And I think that the most important thing I think I've heard people say is collaboration is key, but taking action is probably the most biggest thing because we all have different opportunities, and sometimes our inner thoughts and our inner fears and doubts. I know I've had this with my coaching calls on Mondays with my students, is that don't be afraid to repeat, make a phone call, take action, and you attract what you get out. If you're not doing anything, guess what? You're going to attract a whole lot of nothing, right?
Yep. Ooh, yeah. We can talk about a lot of juicy things across these law of attraction topics.
Exactly. Well, you talk a little bit about the Einstein time. Can you dive into that and share with our folks that are watching and listening about what that is and what that entails?
Yeah. Let's play with this first. I like to start with this fun idea or story about time. So if you think about, let's say that I gave you and everyone here $1,444 every day. So $1,444, I deposit it into your bank account. So this adds up to over $525,000 in a year. And let's pretend that the rule was I said, okay, I'll give you another deposit tomorrow, same amount, $1,444, but you have to spend or invest that money today. Otherwise, I won't give you any more. And so I like to have people think about this because that is the amount of time you have in every day, right? And if you don't spend it wisely, it never comes back. And so time optimization is one of the most powerful tools you can create one of the most powerful, I would say, mindsets that you want to consider how to optimize so that you can then be a master of your time instead of having your time master you. So when we think about Einstein time, what's really interesting to know is that you are the creator of your time. And what I mean by that is most people are victimized by their time and they think, so let's think anyone here, and you could even put this in the comments. I can't see all the comments, I don't think, coming in, but let's see what Scott sees. Right. So, if you think, what do you say about time? Okay. So like type into the chat, what are some of the main things you say about time? And I want to see what some of the common threads are for people if we get any comments coming in.
Most important asset I have.
Ooh, nice.
Don't feel like there's enough in the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Always wish there was more.
Yeah.
Another one, we regret what we spent badly.
Oh, you know what I think is amazing when you hear those? They're so equated to money. That's why I like to use that example at the beginning, because money and time, the way that you manage both is going to show you either an abundance or a scarcity mindset. So that first person that said it's the most important asset we have, that's how you turn time into money. When you think, okay, how do I use my time effectively to turn it into money, to turn it into a state where I'm in a state of joy and I'm the creator of my time. And the only possibility to have that is if you create Einstein time or access Einstein time, where you know that you're the creator of it and it can expand based on your perception of it. And so Einstein time is all about relativity. So a good example here is imagine that you were hanging out with someone you loved and you notice that time, it like flies by, but you lose your sense of time. And it feels like you want to expand the time when you're doing what you love. When you're doing something you hate or that is giving you pain. So let's say that you're sitting on top of a burner in your house on the stove, you're instantly going to want time to constrict and you want it to go faster. Right. So anytime you're in a state of stress or not enoughness, so we had a couple of people say, there's never enough time. You always want more time. That is you experiencing time as a scarce supply where you're thinking there's never enough and I'm the victim to time. And so when you're in that state, you're going to cause time to change in your perception of it. And you're not going to be able to be as productive. And so it's really wild to think when you start to notice yourself stating things like, there's never enough time. You want to start to play with reframing that and saying, I'm the creator of time. How can I create more time? How can I be more efficient with my time? And so, I want to play with people and just think about what's a good definition of productivity. So what would people say is a good definition of productivity? Because ultimately with our time, we're striving for productivity. Mm-hmm. So what does productivity mean to everyone?
Somebody mentioned making money,
okay.
Swapping my time for money.
Okay.
Another one, let's see here. Anybody else in here? Peter, Matt, John, Frank, feel free to comment in this as well for you. Let's see here. Just assigning a value, something positive, not necessarily negative. Well, I guess okay. I bet if you're arrested and you got 20 years in jail, time would not be a good thing.
Yeah, you'd really need to master yourself in that situation. Yeah. It's wild you say that because my dissertation research was with incarcerated men. And I interviewed guys who spent 18 years on average in prison, and a lot of them spent time in solitary confinement. One guy, 9 years. Wow. And that was one of the questions I thought, how did you deal with that time? And so that I love that you said that, because that perception is going to be what matters. Think about people like Viktor Frankl and Man's Search for Meaning, and that passing of time. The reason that he could endure it is because he had a powerful why attached to the end of it. He had a reason to get out. So when you have a powerful reason for your time, your productivity increases because you know your why. Mm-hmm. So time is very much related to how you spend it based on what's important to you in your why. So productivity, so you said, some people said making money, turning time into money. I'm curious if anyone here relates it to joy.
Ooh, that's a good, yeah. I don't know. Everybody in here think about that. I was just thinking about some of the things you were saying there. Like last year, I've taken more responsibility for my health
Yeah.
and my like I was diagnosed with diabetes, blood sugars through the roof, stuff like that. So I really said I've got to change what I'm doing. So instead of sleeping till 9, 10 and getting up and not doing anything, I'm getting up at 7:30, 8 o'clock and walking for an hour, 2 hours a day now. And
Nice.
that 2 hour is really some of the most valuable because I found it was a time not only listen to like the Inner Power Entrepreneur podcast, all right, but to also like center myself and like prime my day, like as a Tony Robbins fan, prime it with getting the brain on the right path and using that 30 minutes to 2 hours to really be the most valuable time of the day because it sets my whole energy level and conscious of where I'm going and what I'm looking to acquire, especially on a Monday. How am I tackling? What am I going to make use of my time and my free time to get
Yeah.
energy?
I love that. And do you do that almost always in the morning, first thing?
Always first thing in the morning.
Okay.
Like today, I didn't want to get it was all wet and grainy outside. I actually had to go find a rain jacket to walk in the rain, but I got it done. But yeah, it's always first thing in the morning most of the time.
Okay. And you chose that strategically to get aligned first thing in the morning.
Yes,
Yeah.
because it was the time where I said, well, I didn't really want to do it at night.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, it's the time I have available. And I knew it's going to take a while, but it took time for me to build those habits and
Yeah.
get up a little bit early each day, a little bit early each day, a little bit early today. So now by the time noon rolls around, I've got an hours of workout. Plus we've already got more work being done than most people accomplish.
Yeah. Yeah. So I love that you're saying this strategic use of your time based on a powerful why, where you go, okay, longevity requires that I take care of my health and also to optimize the time that you have. So life isn't just about time. It's about quality of time, right? Because if your health is falling apart and you don't feel good, then the time is going to feel miserable. Mm-hmm. And none of us want that.
Well, it's funny you say that because that was actually a big driving force when I was diagnosed. I watched my father struggled with diabetes for like almost 30 years, where the last 3 years of his life was not fun at all. He 17 only his heart was only working like 17% effective. He had a couple heart attacks. It just was a miserable final 2 years. I was like, okay, I'm going down that same path. I have to change what I want, otherwise I'm gonna have the same outcome,
Yeah. Okay, I love this so much. So you're talking about like the ultimate use of decision and radical responsibility to be the producer of how you feel in your time, which helps you expand your time and have high quality time. So, I like to think when we think of productivity, you're thinking of these three things. So maximum results in the minimum amount of time. So for you, we could relate this to walking, and you're listening to podcasts and you're getting yourself aligned, right? So you're using your time effectively to then have maximum results in a shorter amount of time, because you just said you get more done in the day when you start your day this way. Now you're also accelerating health and feeling good, which is going to cause you to have more energy, be clearer and more focused, feel better about your future, increase your confidence. All of this raises your frequency in your state of being. And your state of being is what projects out into the quantum field and then attracts success back to you. So that's why it's so important to get aligned first thing in the morning. So you're an amazing shining example of that. So maximum results in the minimum amount of time. Another way to think about productivity is the maximum profits with the least amount of effort. So like the person said before, make maximizing money through time. And so you're getting the highest ROI results with what you're doing with your time. I always like to think about it from that perspective of we all have the exact same amount of time in a day. And yet some people make billions of dollars in that period of time in a year. And some people barely scrape to get by. So that's because there's not productive action happening. And sometimes productive action looks like taking a break. Mm-hmm. Right. So it's not just about being in action all the time and pushing yourself. In fact, that's actually often leads to overwhelm and burnout, which isn't the best use of your time. So maximum profits with the least amount of effort, and then maximum joy with the least amount of have-tos. So if you ever hear yourself saying, I have to do this, I have to do that, I got to do this, and you feel this burden of pressure on your time, you're actually pushing away success. And I know all of your people here are going, okay, I want to make the most amount of money I can through creative real estate investing and bring in big, I always like to say buckets of money.
Buckets of money is appropriate. Yeah,
buckets of money,
that,
right? And the way to do that is to be strategic with your time. And so, let's play with some strategies here. I always like to give people strategies. So the first thing is understanding Einstein time, knowing you're the creator of it. And so the first thing is to recognize, reframe, repeat to reprogram. So my inner power formula, 3 simple steps. So recognize, reframe, repeat to reprogram. And let's give an example of how this plays out. For Scott, he recognized, oh, wow, my dad died did you say that he passed in his last 3 years?
He's been gone for about 15 years now, but his last 2 to 3 years were miserable. Yeah.
Okay. So you recognized, wow, my dad went down this trajectory. I'm headed down the same path and I don't choose that. So I'm going to reframe what I'm doing with my time. And I'm going to repeat daily to get different results. And that's all the inner power formula does. It's a really simple strategy to reprogram your subconscious mind. And it's really a law of attraction strategy, because in law of attraction, how you use your time is going to show up in an outer material form. So whatever you're thinking, feeling, believing during the present moment is what you're going to create your future based on. And so I could hang out with anyone here and read your future just by seeing how you're thinking, feeling, believing, what you're doing today. And that is how you can predict your future. You can also know your subconscious thoughts by seeing what's showing up in your outer world. So, we'll just keep going back to this example. You started to see your health degrading. That's an outer world reality of an inner world belief system, because you go, okay, I'm not prioritizing my health. I don't know what you were eating, but it sounds like you wanted to change your exercise habits. So it was probably a mix of those things, probably some stress. And then you decide, oh no, if I stay on this track, recognize, then I'm not. And if I don't reframe, I am going to be led down this road of not feeling good at the end of my life. Right.
100%.
And that takes a really conscious being. So high fives to you, because not everybody can do that. And I want everyone here to be thinking about, how can I do that? How can I recognize, reframe, and repeat to reprogram? Because otherwise you're going to continue to get the exact same results. And ultimately, actually, it becomes a downward spiral, because as we age, our health degrades, and time, our perception of time gets even more scarce as we age. Just like you were saying, it was your nephew. It's like, kids feel bored often. They're like, I don't know what to do with my time. They don't feel like it's overloaded. As we age, we put more and more and more and more and more on our plates. And then we lose our time productivity, and we start to feel like victims of our time. And anytime we're victims of our time, we are creating resistance and a lack of flow of money, enjoyment, productivity, and everything starts to get harder and harder. And so to recognize, you want to start playing with, I love that, Peter, idea on daily practice of reprogramming. So on a daily method, one thing you can do is ask yourself, is this task the best use of my time? So if we're reprogramming time, just ask yourself, is what I'm doing the best use of my time?
I said those exact words at noon today. My coaching call with my students. Peter was on it too. I said,
nice.
You got to do the most productive thing in any given moment, basically.
Yeah. And it's consciousness. Yeah. So, Peter and everyone else here, this is going to require choice. It's radical responsibility. And it always goes back to you deciding, I am committed to being a master of myself first and foremost. That's why I call my podcast Inner Power Entrepreneur, and my company is Inner Power Daily, because your success starts within. So your outer world is a reflection of your inner world. So if you don't like what you're getting on the outside, you've got to change what's within. Things like daily practicing of reprogramming your subconscious mind. And it starts a lot with questions. So I really love a reprogramming tool to be journaling, because it's such an easy practice that you can literally do anywhere, and you don't need to have a lot of tools to do it. Some people struggle with having the right prompts to ask themselves, which is why the daily program that I have helps you with journaling prompts. But it's, a very simple question. Is this the best use of my time? I'll give everyone a couple more. I like to do this every week in my group coaching program. We ask ourselves every Monday, what did I do last week that worked best? So just ask yourself every Monday, what did I do last week that worked best? And when we say work best, we're saying, what was it the most productive use of our time? Did I get results? Did I get expected results? Did I feel good? Are my relationships thriving? Is my health aligned? Am I getting what I want? So you ask yourself that. And then you ask the next question, what did I do last week that didn't work? So just what did I do last week that didn't work? And then the third question is, now what will I change based on knowing this? So what will I change this week based on knowing this? If you ask yourself these questions every week, you will be shocked by the insights that you get about how you spend your time. So when you're asking yourself, what did I do last week that worked? You're saying, oh, this lead gen system worked well. These calls to these particular avatar, I don't know what you call them in your community, but I think about 5-star clients. You go like, hey, are these my 5-star clients? Am I connecting them with them every day? When I'm making those calls, are my conversion rates high? Am I closing deals? Am I getting new leads? Am I making joint venture partnerships? You could ask yourself all those questions. And if the actions you're taking aren't leading to the expected results, then you better reframe them. Mm-hmm. And so it takes you recognizing what's working and what's not to then reframe. What happens when you repeat this over time is that you start to reprogram your subconscious mind. And the reason this is critical is that we are habitual beings who live by the pleasure pain principle. And so we automatically want to do things that give us more pleasure than pain in the present moment. And often growth is painful. And so we tend to shy away from doing things that are growth filled. The problem with that is that you will never get a future that feels amazing because you're not willing to sit in the present moment of doing the thing that will get you the most results in the long run.
Would that be why the gyms are full on January 2nd and empty by February 1st?
Yes, absolutely.
Or the week after, or the second week of January, people are sore and, oh, this is painful. My trainer kicked my ass, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly it right there. Yes. And so, don't be one of those people, right? Like if you're going to commit to something, you've got to decide, commit, and take strategic daily action on repeat. And then it becomes a habit over time. So, I like to think about your subconscious mind as the storehouse for your habits. Mm-hmm. And your habits are created through automaticity. So automaticity, all that means is that you repeated something consciously long enough for it to become unconscious. So you go, okay, like you're saying now, it's probably automatic for you to get up and take your walk. Whereas when you first started, you had to be like, I'm going to choose to do this. And then you did it again and again. And now you're starting to receive some of the benefits. And then you go, okay, now I'm starting to get it. I would even say like we get addicted to the feeling of
totally. Yeah. Steph has said that too. My better she's like, oh, you're addicted. Just lay in bed and snuggle for a little bit. Like I got to get up and get my walk in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you're addicted now. I'm like, yeah, I am actually.
Well, and that's sometimes like the high achiever mentality, which I would say is great about entrepreneurs. It's something that I think entrepreneurs uniquely have as a characteristics that a lot of other people do not, which they are willing to sit in more, quote unquote, pain in the now because they see the long-term possibility of gain. And, that's something that's actually a true gift because there are only 3 things that change us. One would be developmental trajectories where you're just age and things change over time. 2 would be cataclysmic events or just big events like getting married or getting sick or getting in an accident. That's going to change your decisions or your values. And then 3 is choice, conscious choice. And most people don't want to make the conscious choice because it's what we tend to do is wait till something bad happens and then it forces us to choose. And, I get it. I've been there too.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a great story when you say that. I think about all the folks that were technically born with a golden spoon in their mouth. They're wealthy. Yes. When they have their first hurdle, they crash and burn and they can't seem to get up off the ground. Whereas those that come from nothing, they have the pain. They realize, well, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? More of what I'm doing now, or let me do something different to get different results. And that's why the rags to riches story is so prevalent out there,
Yeah. I mean, it's us, right? Like, I know that for me, that was it. I had to be, one of my clients said, you got to sometimes get smacked by the spiritual 2x4. I was like, yeah, that is so true. And that's why. It's because often when I'll say, well, let me say this. Now that I have these tools, I choose to change much more quickly than I used to. And the only reason I think that I could attribute that decision is that I now know that it's easier in the long run. So I go, okay, I'm willing to sit in the discomfort of the now to attract something in the future that's very aligned. And so, it's a perception as well, because discomfort in the now isn't necessarily uncomfortable if you see it as an obstacle that's on the way instead of something that's in the way. So it's this concept of going like, oh, do I see growth as bad challenge, or do I see growth as growth filled challenge? And so, on the upward spiral trajectory, when you're at the bottom part of the spiral, that's where people perceive pain. And that's where they go, either they continue on and they go upward, or they decide not to go and they go downward on a spiral trajectory, and the spiral gets worse and the spiral expands. So if you want to choose to be on an upward spiral, expansive growth path, you've got to make decisions that are conscious and filled with, I would say, being really attached to your future why. And going, okay, what is the legacy I'm choosing to leave? What kind of intergenerational patterns am I breaking in my family? What kind of, why do I want to do what I'm doing as an entrepreneur? And when you get aligned with that, that's when time becomes magnetic to opportunities, success, money, fulfillment, joy. And anytime you're in those states, you're really accessing the power of Einstein time, because now you create your time, you create more energy, and now you become, I think of it as just becoming an attractor magnet to what you consciously say you want.
Makes so much sense, because the downward spiral, it kind of falls in line with what you said earlier. If you're in that bad headspace, you seem to attract more bad space, and that's why we see people who get tripped up by one bad thing, they lead to two bad things, three bad things, the whole day or week just becoming a shit show in a lot of cases, right?
Yep. I love you said that. I call it a shit storm.
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, well, and that's like my whole life used to feel that way. I think of it, I do create a lot of content, but I think it's a podcast release that's coming up, and I talk about radical responsibility. It's on Wednesday, it'll be coming out, and it talks about a lot of what we're sharing here, where, okay, if you're not radically responsible, what it means is that you're blaming the outer world. And a lot of people use time as their number one scapegoat. So if you say things like, I don't have enough time, I don't want to do, like if someone asks you if you can do something, you say, oh, I don't have time for that. You're a victim of your time. And you're also not willing to be radically responsible and say, I don't choose to do that. Because we will always create time for what's in our highest value. An example would be, let's say your kid runs into your office and says, Dad, I want to play football. And you're in the middle of, your business day and everything's designed. And you're like, no, that's not, no, I usually a dad would say, I don't have enough time right now. No, I don't have time. Let's say your kid comes in with their head broken open, bleeding, and they need help. You're going to create the time. Right. So it's not true that you don't have the time. And so you want to start shifting and reframing away from saying things like, I don't have the time. And you want to say, I choose to do blank with my time instead. And this will start to have you create ownership of your time. And when you're in that radical responsibility place, now you become a conscious, deliberate creator of your reality. When you're in a victim place, it means that you're blaming something else outside of you, in this case, time. And you're thinking, I'm a victim to time. I don't have enough of it, which then perpetuates the downward spiral of scarcity mindedness, and then often leads to scarcity of money. I relate those two a lot. And sometimes they're not, because you could have an abundance of money in the bank, but still feel really strapped for time and really stressed out. And I see that a lot with entrepreneurs. They can be, uber successful and making multi-millions of dollars, and they still feel stressed out. And typically what they'll say, I don't have enough time. So there's this victim feeling around time, even though they've generated a lot of money. Sometimes they go together, where if you're scarcity minded, you might not have a lot of time or money. Sometimes it's one or the other, or sometimes it's, oh, hey, I make a lot of money. Now I don't have time for my relationships. And so it's either or thinking. You're stuck in either or thinking and scarcity mindedness when you think, I only have time for this thing, not this and this. So it's either or versus both and.
Well, it makes me think too, when you're talking about that, how so many entrepreneurs, especially in real estate, we're control freaks. We have to control everything, and those that are most successful are the ones that delegate the most, and probably the most happiest, the ones that, if they can't get things done, they delegate it to something so they can spend their time on what they really want to spend their time on, right?
Yes, yes. Oh, great. Let's go there. That's
Okay.
amazing that you just said that. So, anytime that you want to access the power of Einstein time and attract from a state of inner power and really be the deliberate creator of your time, you always want to be dropping, automating, delegating everything you possibly can. That's not in alignment with your zone of genius. So I'm sure a lot of people here have heard of the 80-20 rule.
No.
And so this is how you would apply the 80-20 rule is you go, okay, if 80% of my results are coming from 20% of my input, how could I hyper focus on that 20 to get even more results and have them feel good? And so you've got to first recognize what is the 80-20 split of how I spend my time. And so here's a great strategy for everyone. If you just take a piece of paper or in your journal on the left column, on the very far left, you just write down item by item how you spend your time. And when I do this with people, sometimes I have them do a quarter, sometimes just a week, depending on how long we have. And you just write down every item of that you spent your time on personally and professionally. The next column, you would write, did you enjoy it or hate it? Or and like some spectrum in between. So joy would be like 10, hate would be 0. And so anything, and then scale it in that between. So if, let's say it's a 5, it's kind of neutral, right? You're like, didn't love it, didn't hate it. Then in the next one, you realize, okay, with these things that I spent my time on that aren't a 10, those are your 80 things. The things that are 10s are your 20 things. And if you focus on those 20 things and you're in your zone of genius, then you can expand time. So anything that's not, I'd say a 9 or a 10 to start with, you want to then the next column, write, drop, automate, or delegate. So drop things would be things that are just inessential nonsense that you've been told you should do. So it could be, depending on the types of businesses everyone's building, let's say you're building a brand and someone told you should do a whole bunch of social media. You want to be asking yourself, is this necessary? Is it getting any results? So you could potentially drop something you're doing there. That's just one example. Automate would look like automated systems, so follow-up lead gen systems, like we were talking about at the beginning. You've got to contact people multiple times before you close a deal. So you need automated systems for this. If you don't have automated systems, you're going to feel stressed out and burnt out a lot. And then delegate would be delegating to somebody who, and I say two things for this. Delegation sometimes looks like find somebody who's, 80% as good as you are and delegate to them. That's going to be in the earlier stages of business. And when you're in the later stages of business, hire the experts and don't worry about how much it costs because they will always make you money. And never worry about how much delegation costs because you're always going to be getting a higher ROI because you're going to be spending time doing more of what you love. But you want to think about it from that perspective, like a phase-based delegation, because sometimes when you're in a startup phase, you might not be able to hire the $10,000 a month expert, but then when you're in later phase, you probably could.
Well, that's one of the things that was drilled in my head by my mentors early on. Look, if you want to go from making where you're at to making 6 figures, hire an assistant to do that 20%, and that they will pay for themselves, if not 2 to 3 times it, but frees you up to doing the most productive things in a given moment by not wasting your time so you can either dad it.
Yeah, totally. Well, and what you're talking about is maximum joy with the least have tos, right? When you're in a state of have to, so, for everyone here, think about so in quantum physics and in law of attraction, the way this works is that I could measure your energetic frequency by how you feel. So if you're stressed out, you're in somewhat of a fear state. And your resonant frequency or your vibrational frequency is very low. And so what you're putting out into the quantum field is a low vibrational frequency of stress. And when the quantum field reads stress, all it reads, it doesn't say like, oh, poor you, Scott. I'm sorry you're stressed. Let me help you by sending you a whole bunch of nice stuff so you're not stressed. It just reads your stress and goes, okay, match the stress, right? So it just matches stress and sends you things to continue to be stressed because that's what you're putting into the quantum field. Interestingly, also, when you're stressed, what happens is you're sending a signal out into the universe that you have too much on your plate already. You're overwhelmed. And when you have an overwhelmed vibrational frequency, it's like you're in lockdown mode. You're like, don't send me anything. I'm not open for business. I can't deal with anymore. And so you don't create opportunities easily. So you can't magnetize easy opportunities and make easy money. And I love to teach people to work less and make more. And you can't do that when you're in a state of constant stress. And so that's why it's so important to consider, how do I feel right now? And how am I using my time to feel good How am I using my time to delegate and step into my zone of genius and expand it so that when you put that into the quantum field, you're like, yes, I am a high vibe productivity master. I love how I'm spending my time. I enjoy what I'm doing. And now that's what gets matched back to you. So easier opportunities come your way. When I've had the coolest, joint ventures or just clients coming my way out of, it feels like thin air, it's because I'm in a state of flow and I'm feeling very expansive with my time. When I feel on lockdown and everything gets, stressed, I instantly go to my tools and go, oh man, we got to reframe the energy. Otherwise, I am going to create a blocked flow in my money magnetism.
So that's, yeah. I mean, I can think of examples like that where you get on, it seems like you're on a roll. You have one good thing happen, another good thing happens, and out of the blue, these things come that you maybe you're not open to just even seeing because you've got that closed down, that opportunities go by, or you don't see the silver cloud around the silver lining around the cloud when bad things do happen.
Yeah.
You miss out. Well, this is actually probably the reason it's happened. This is something good. Like I think back to a few years. I mean, we've been doing virtual events, virtual summits before they were ever popular back in the day, but it all came from a failed live event we were putting on in Houston. It was like an $80,000 check that we had to write that we didn't do good. We canceled this event. Wow. And we were sitting there thinking about why we didn't. We said, well, let's just do a virtual event. Takes away a lot of this. And suddenly it's, 7 years later, we do it once a year and it's been one of the best events we've ever done. But if we hadn't been open to it, we just sat in there in our car, cried about it, we wouldn't have gotten any further along,
Yeah. I mean, and that's really like the ultimate mindset right there is what can I learn from the perceived quote unquote failures? So some people, if they looked at that as failure, all it would mean if they failed is that they gave up and didn't now then do the virtual event, right? Mm-hmm. They just go like, oh, we failed, we did bad, we did wrong, we lost money, yada, yada, yada. And now we don't succeed in the future. And instead, somebody who decides to optimize time for the future and really align themselves with future success, they go like, I learned a lot from that lesson. Mm-hmm. Like, what can I learn from that lesson? And, so I always have people, especially if you're charged about something from the past, you're going to project it into the future. So my definition of fear is the future expectation of awful results. And so it comes from something bad in the past that happened. And now you're afraid it's going to happen in the future. So you project into the future a bad story about something that could happen. And so it causes you then to procrastinate in the present moment. It causes you to beat yourself up and think, what if I fail? I better not take action. I better not, we just beat ourselves up with these things. And so then you create a future to be afraid of. And you create things to attract your way, to prove to you that fear is real and that it's something that's going to stop you. And so instead, I like to people to get in the flow state. I think of flow as the future looking for opportunities. Faithfully looking for opportunities to win. And it could be future based, right? So you're looking for opportunities to win, and whatever you focus on expands. So if you're focusing on fear, that's what expands. If you're focusing on flow, that's what expands. So for you, wow. I mean, that's powerful because, 80 grand is a lot to lose. And you could have gone into a fear state and just thrown in the towel and given up. Instead, you used it as a learning opportunity. Now you get into a flow state and it's expanded. I'm sure there have been bumps along the way and here you are continuing to go.
Yeah. Well, I think about also too, a lot of folks that we speak to, because when people reach up the phone and they book a call with me to talk about note investing, one of the biggest things that overwhelmingly hear from those that aren't taking action is they went through a bad time in 2008, 9, and 10. They had a foreclosure, or they had a rentals, their financing fell through. And it literally is this anchor, this ball and chain they drag with them, even though it's been gone for years, they're in a different situation. It still haunts their future because that's what they think about.
Yeah. Yeah. And what you're talking about is sabotage, right? We sabotage ourselves from future success based on our past perceived failures. And so, a really great strategy for people who are stuck in that situation. And I hear this too, because I work with a lot of real estate investors, and I hear this often, like, but what if it happens again? And so they're holding on in this fear state. And so play with a benefits list. So this is a really powerful strategy where you write, what are the benefits of that blank thing that happened? So write down every single positive thing that you can think of that happened from that, the 2008 crash. And when you write a list, and this is challenging for people to do, I say get to 250 benefits.
Wow.
Yeah. So the reason I say that is because it starts to then tap into your subconscious belief system. When you just go on the surface, you don't dig in enough. And you really got to unearth the subconscious belief system. My favorite quote of all time, and the one that I run my whole business by, is by Carl Jung. And he says, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. And so it's our job, if we want to change our future reality, we want to tap into our subconscious and understand what it's holding in our belief system, and then projecting out and attracting our future to us. And so we get to go like, what do I believe to be true about 2008? And if I'm holding any fear around it, I'm projecting that into the future and attracting it to me to prove that it's true, that it's going to happen again. And you're a powerful being. You will attract realities that are really tough based on your belief system. And so it's in your benefit and in your best interest to access the law of attraction in a strategic way, like I teach, and reprogram your mindset to attract from a state of flow instead of a state of fear. Otherwise, it'll just happen again.
Well, I also like the fact 250, there is something to be said about writing something down so often that you really do a deeper dive. What happens? Have you had folks that couldn't get to 250 with something? They were just so stuck in their way in a lot of cases.
Yeah, definitely. So I'll say this, if you do this on your own, it will take time. You're not going to do it in one sitting. So when I do it to work on myself, I'll put it on my desktop on a spreadsheet and I'll start. And sometimes I'll knock out like 30. And then I get to a stuck point and then I'm like, and then something will happen that will make me think of 10 more. And you keep adding and adding to it until what happens is you will start to, in your mind, neutralize the event. And you will see that there were just as many drawbacks as benefits to the situation. And that's always the case with every experience we have. The difference is that sometimes we perceive them to be bad consciously, and we don't see the subconscious benefits. So we typically see, in a fear space situation, we typically consciously see all the bad parts of it, but we don't see any of the subconscious good parts of it. And it's always balanced because that's the way the universe works.
So our inner conscious is actually of the boogeyman, basically, in a lot of
totally.
cases.
Yeah. And you know why? It's actually an amazing survival mechanism, right? Like, we are wired to remember bad things 8 times more easily than good things because it keeps us safe. And so that's why you've actually got to make a conscious effort to program yourself to see the good stuff, because automatically your brain wants to see the challenges and the things bad that have happened to keep you safe in the future. And so that's why you've got to actually program yourself to see the positive. And most people don't know that. I often think, like, when I talk to people, they perceive these successful entrepreneurs and they're like, they just, kind of magically got that way. It's like, no, that is strategy. It is strategic to have a happy, fulfilling, rewarding, successful business, a happy, rewarding, fulfilling, successful relationship, a happy, rewarding, successful bank account. That is strategy. It doesn't just happen to you because we're not wired for that to happen to us. We can be really abundant. I do think that we are all born to be abundant, but we have so many blocks to it. And we have so many subconscious sabotage problems that cause us to not get there, that people are much more likely to be on the end of that than on thriving and feeling really good in their lives.
Wow. I'm sitting here just going through bad things that happened, but how I wouldn't be where I'm at today if those bad things hadn't happened back in the time. You know what I mean? What does Frank say here? The dailygcode.com or something like that. I don't know what that means there, Frank, but anyway.
I don't know that either. Yeah.
But it's so the thing is that our once would have tripped us up, like going through divorce or going through a bankruptcy or having a deal go south. Trips with us often becomes a rallying point that is like a scar that we wear now. We can move forward.
Yeah.
I've got a friend who was a cutter when they were younger and they've got scars on their stuff, but now it's something that they wear proudly versus covering up because they overcame that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's impossible to grow without challenge. And so, if you're wishing for a one-sided experience where you only experience happy gain, you're never going to grow. You can't evolve without challenge. And so how you perceive it is what matters. And just like you said, the difference between successful and unsuccessful people will be their state of mind and what you're talking about. When those challenges happen, do they decide to see it as a gain and a lesson and something that made them who they are today in a more exponentially I'd say like fulfilling your potential way? Or does it cause them to blame, feel like a victim, think it's going to happen again, think that it's someone else's outside of them's fault? So it's like, I always ask people, who are you blaming, past or present, for your current reality? Whatever that is, that gives you clues into you not owning radical responsibility for being the creator of your reality. So if you are blaming COVID, or you're blaming the 2008 crash, and you're saying that's why I'm not successful today, you are stuck in a victim mindset, and that you're never going to get the outcomes you want unless you start to reprogram yourself to let that go and to transform the energy around it.
So shouldn't we have you talking to our politicians who always love to blame the last guy or the last person
Yes.
or the person across the debate from them?
Yes, absolutely.
Peter says on here, mental block, I'm guessing, is also a factor.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. So I would think of mental blocks as subconscious belief system. So I came up with a term called competing commitments. And what this means is that you have a competing commitment between your conscious and your subconscious mind. This would be a mental block. So consciously, let's say you go, I want to be a 6 or 7 figure real estate investor. Subconsciously, you might be saying, I don't know what I'm doing, but it crashed in 2008 and I lost all my money. I'm an imposter. And what if I lose it again? All these things wrapped up. And then, so your subconscious is 95% of you. That's wild to think about. 95%, only 5% of you is conscious. So if you have this competing commitment going on and you're not aligned, then what do you think is going to win out? The 5% or the 95%? It's always the 95%. And that's why subconscious reprogramming is so important. You can't change your reality until you subconsciously reprogram yourself.
It's so good. So many things come to mind. And I'm sure everybody on here is like, I think he's like, thank you.
You're welcome, Peter. It's such a gift to know. I mean, for me, this all started when, like I've told my story on your podcast, but really for me, it was like, I was very stuck in victim mindedness. I blamed everything in my surroundings, like starting from, it was wild to like go through my history and be like, oh, I blamed my parents and I blamed my brother. And then I blamed my ex-husband. And then I blamed religion and sociology and feminism. Yeah. I mean, I could go down the list. And so, when I was crying on the floor one night and going, my life is a shit show, who's to blame? And I realized like, oh, it's me. Like I'm the one common denominator in every single one of these situations. And I was like, holy moly, I've got to change. And it was such a liberating moment because I realized like no one's coming to save me. And also no one's to blame except for me. And some people beat themselves up. And in that moment for me, instead of beating myself up, I said like, I am willing to do whatever it takes to learn how to change and learn how to make more money, learn how to improve my relationships, because I really struggled in relationships after, watching the way my childhood played out. And so it was like, I want to have a happy marriage. I want to make as much money as possible. And so when I started to learn these strategies that I teach and universal laws, I realized like, oh, there are actually rules to the game of life. And if you know them, you can win. And to me, that was like such incredible liberation. So I really went from a state of disempowerment and victim mindedness to feeling powerful and in control of my reality. And that's why I love the word power, because when you feel powerful, it means that you are confident, you're strategic, you're aligned, you're focused, you're in your zone of genius. And now you really feel like you have a magic wand to create whatever you desire to create. Yeah, sometimes it takes time because there's a time gap between a thought change and then having enough momentum built up around it. And that's why you've got to repeat, because it takes a little time to build the momentum. I kind of think about it like a train. Let's say you're on a freight train that's got filled with negative thoughts. And then all of a sudden you have this epiphany like, oh my God, I'm on a freight train that's filled with negative thoughts. And you decide, I want to stop this freight train. It takes a little while to stop the freight train. Then you hop on the other train filled with positive thoughts, and it takes time to get it going. That's why there's a time gap between you having an epiphany and then something changing in your outer world. It doesn't have to be a super long time gap, but there is a little bit of a time gap because you need momentum built to create that material outer reality. So for me, I went from food stamps to 6 figures in my business in my first year. And then it took me time with relationships. I went from affairs and really challenging relationships to now being just like blissfully married. My husband works with me. I love my life. And so that took some time, but not that long. I spent more than 40 years of my life being pretty stuck and miserable. And then in the last 5 years, or I guess I'm 46, in the last 6 years, I love my life. And so that's the difference between, just being on the downward spiral and then moving into the upward spiral.
Yeah, it's interesting. It does take momentum. It takes time. It also takes kind of, well, you say getting off that bad thought train. It also kind of takes getting outside of the situation or removing maybe some people from your life for a period of time too, doesn't it?
Yes, definitely. We'll go with the train analogy. It'd be like, hey, you're on the train and you walk through all the cars and you go like, hey, I realize that we're on the negative shit train. Who wants to come with me and get on this train? And some people don't want to. And you can't, you are not in control of anyone else. It's one of the biggest things. I'm glad you said this, because I see this a lot where people who start to grow, they're like, oh my God, I have to change, or I choose to change, or it just changes. Like the people I hang out with start to completely change, either by falling away or staying on, like in tune with you, let's say. And the reason that works is resonance. So if you think about frequencies, when you go from like a fear-based frequency to moving up the scale of consciousness, and you start to have more courage and joy, but the people that you're hanging out with are still stuck in fear, there's a disharmoniousness. So there's a lack of resonance. And so it's literally an impossibility for you to keep hanging out and keep moving up the scale. And so either those people will, I say often the universe takes care of it for you, which is awesome. Or you choose and you say, hey, I'm going this direction and you're not going along with me. Let's do something different.
You have to, I think sometimes you've got to have those epiphanies, like this person is not good for me, or I need to quit hanging out with him. And sometimes it's the hardest when we're changing things. I have those conversations with people, especially trying to leave the job to become a full-time entrepreneur, and the backlash they get from friends or family. They don't understand. Like, what do you think? You're too good for us now?
Yeah.
Or they're like, oh, you can't do that. You're an idiot, or you're
crazy.
Bob. Exactly.
Yeah.
Bob, the computer guy, not Bob, the real estate mogul. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, I like in the beginning of a new quest, I often say, choose wisely who you tell, because you don't want people to, like, it's like planting a seed in a new garden, and you don't want people to be trampling on it. You want to give it time to be nurtured and grow. And so choose allies who are growth minded. It's also why I like to create group programs, and like you have as well, you have a community of people, because we need that. It's really good for your soul and your future development to hang out with like-minded, growth-filled people. And so, it's really important in those ways. And then, I tell people sometimes you'll be surprised when people come along with you, and sometimes you'll be surprised by the people who don't choose to. And ultimately, I love this thought: loss is the gain of that which is more aligned. So
okay, wait, you need to say that one more time so I get that again.
Yeah. Lost. So I came up with this after, so my last relationships, this is what happened. Like, I started growing a whole bunch. He did not. I found out he was having an affair, and I was like, wow, the universe took care of this for me, because like I was going this direction and he kept asking me like, will you please stop growing? I can't keep up. I don't want to keep up. Like, and I was like, that's weird to have someone you love ask you to stop growing. That doesn't make sense in and of itself. And so, the universe helped kick him out. And I was journaling one day and I was like, wow, loss is really the gain of that which is more aligned. And so if you see it that way, that's universal principles.
I love that. I'm having like images of things like that happen. Like when I was first married out of school, I was reading more stuff, changing my mind, writing my goals, and laminating, putting on the buy the TV and buy the refrigerator.
Yes, I love it.
And my wife at the time worked with autistic children, and I would come home as my mother-in-law's come over, and all my lists are ripped down and thrown in the drawers. I'm like, what happened to my list? Well, I didn't want my mom to see them. Like, what's wrong with sharing my goals? It was the same thing. We'd go out to dinner, and she's like, don't talk about real estate. Anybody ask you what you do, just tell them you're, this. I'm like, what is going on here? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's funny. It happens, but it's Yeah, sometimes you gotta snip the rope and keep
Yep.
flying up like a hot air balloon. Keep going up and let that dead weight fall.
Yeah. That's a perfect example. And it's like breaking out of the box that's held you back in the past. If you want to keep staying in the same size box, you're going to stay the same. And so to break out of it, you've got to lose the comfort of your old way of being and open up opportunities for new things to come in. And so, anytime I'm playing with up leveling myself, I'll always ask myself, like, ooh, what needs to be cut from my life right now that's holding me back in a past-based way? Like, what can I cut? Who can I, and it'll present itself pretty obviously. Usually it's usually something you've already been thinking about. And then when you do it, the liberation you feel tells you all of the answers right there. You're like, oh, I feel so much better. And then, loss is the gain of that which is more aligned.
So good. That's like, that should be on a t-shirt. Bumper sticker. Now,
Yeah.
you mentioned it a little bit earlier. I want you to spend a little time talking about your group stuff that you're doing and go into that, because I know we have a few folks on there. I know we're coming up on an hour here.
Yeah.
I want you to share a little bit about that. I know time flies when you're having
fun. There's the time warp. Yep.
Right. Exactly.
Like, wait, that felt like 1 minute.
I know. Right. Right.
That's
exactly.
so cool. Yeah. So do you have links for stuff for them?
Yeah, I do actually.
Okay.
Yep.
So drop them places and I'll tell them about the program. And, Scott and I are hanging out together. So use his links because, he's sending people my way through his links. And the reason for that is because he likes what I do. And what I do is help you become a better version of yourself as an entrepreneur so that you can take it to whatever level you desire. So everything that I teach is going to be based on helping you get aligned so that you can magnetize success your way. And we're talking strategy. I would imagine people listening today would hear, I'm not just like all woo woo. Yes, I'm very spiritual and I think about the law of attraction, but it's mixed with strategy. So in the law of attraction for entrepreneurs program, what we do is every single day you get a short lesson, a journaling prompt, a short meditation, and an mantra. This is all meant to be done in 15 minutes or less. So it's a daily alignment system to help you reprogram your subconscious mind. So remember earlier, I said it's impossible to change without reprogramming your subconscious mind. Mm-hmm. And I knew that it was going to take people being repetitive to do that. And so I thought, what kind of program can I come up with that helps people reprogram themselves on a daily basis without me having to be there with them every single day. So because I love to podcast, it's basically a paid podcast. And I personally think it's the best program I've ever created. It's my heart, my soul, my energy, my mindset, my experience, like everything I learn and know goes into that program. And so you can unlock 90 lessons, opt in for free, 90 lessons, check it out, see if it's a good fit. And then it's only $99 a month after that. So really, really smoking deal. And, people in there are getting insane results. So there's that. If they want to look at the Rapid Biz Growth Roadmap, click on that link below there. That's going to give you 7 law of attraction steps to help you start to stretch and scale your business. So those are the steps that I took to go from food stamps to 6 figures in my first year. And so it's going to give you an overview and an outline of how to think about building a business from I would say like a law of attraction and client attraction perspective. And I do work with a ton of real estate investors. I work with a lot of coach type entrepreneurs, consultants, freelancers, real estate investors. And I've had insane success with all of them where, people will double their income. I had one guy double his income in 1 week, which was amazing because he already had a high income. And then I've had people charge the most they've ever charged. I had a real estate guy close 5 deals in 1 week, which was just awesome. Really great stuff. And so the reason it works is I'm delivering universal principles and the rules to the game of life and applying them to an entrepreneurial mindset. And so, there's nothing unique about me in terms of these are things that have been taught before. They're timeless lessons, yet I'm wrapping them in this package for entrepreneurs because it really doesn't exist that I've found a law of attraction program specifically designed for entrepreneurs. And so that's what it is.
And I've dropped them both in the YouTube link. If you're watching the replay, they'll be in the description. But since you're joining us guys are live on there, Mary and everybody else watching live, the links are in there. So this first one is the law of attraction that Dr. Banner talked about. It's 90 days there. Smoking deal, by the way, phenomenal deal. And then, of course, your Rapid Biz Growth is also phenomenal as well. So
yeah, and that one's a free masterclass. So they can take the free masterclass. And then of course, if they wanted to join me in my group, that's a higher level. You know, if you're making 6K or more per month in your business, then that's a higher level where you hang out with me in the group twice a week. I mean, we like deep dive and that's for rapid business growth. So, you know, if on the rapid biz growth roadmap, there's a spot to do a consult with me there. So if they're interested in that, I cherry pick the people that come into that community.
Mm-hmm. Now, who aren't the people you want to talk to? The Debbie Downers, the people that have an excuse for everything, or people that are like, hey, I need to do something. I need to make 2024 my best year yet.
Oh yeah. You know, I love that you say this because I was on a podcast once and this person was asking me the funniest questions. I was like, weird. I don't have this problem. You know, she's like, you know, what do you tell someone when they're just not taking action and this? And then I said, I just don't attract those people because that's not me. And you attract who you are and what you are. So what I've noticed is that when people come into, let's say the law of attraction for entrepreneurs, they'll kick themselves out pretty quickly because what they want, they're looking for a magic pill. They're looking for someone else to solve their problems and they're not willing to do what it takes. And so they can kick themselves out. And so I don't interact with people like that very much. I definitely attract action takers who are really into evolving. I would say people who in some ways think about their business. They might not have this conscious thought like, oh, I think about my business spiritually, but it's like they really care about the people they work with and they really care about leaving a legacy and they really care about building wealth from a strategic place and feeling good while they do it. And so, you know, I attract action takers and obviously if you come into my community, you're going to need to be at least law of attraction curious. You might not be like, oh, that's what I was looking for. But once you start to hear the principles, I love it so much when people come in and they're like, well, at first I wasn't sure about you and what you teach. And then they're like, oh my God, this is what I've been missing my whole life. And so, you know, I love to attract the law of attraction curious.
Who wouldn't love to have, instead of our conscious and stinking thinking sometimes, Dr. Amanda as our conscious? It's like that little, like Petto or the little cricket, Jiminy Cricket to tell us so exactly what we need to be thinking, how we need to overcome that and do that. That's awesome. That's phenomenal. Any questions, comments from you guys that are watching us live, join us on here? Feel free. Now's the time to ask. Something, if you want to come on live, you have a specific thing you want to talk about, feel free or ask Dr. Amanda. We'll let you do that. Or is there a way to schedule a call with you or anything like that straight on the website too, right?
Yep. If they go to that link you put for the Rapid Biz Growth Roadmap, right under the video, there's a consult link so they can schedule there. If they go to any of my things, you know, if they type in Inner Power Entrepreneur to go to the podcast, they'll find it. I've got a ton of free and paid for resources for people. So my genius is ID, which stands for innovation and discernment. So I love to come up with solutions for people. So like I'm constantly creating methods and strategies and like it's like all I do.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
Lots of cool stuff for people.
Let's see here. Where are the links on to? You've not seen them. Well, Mary Ann, probably refresh your screen because they're literally above your comment here. So it's in the comments. If you probably just need to hit a refresh on your screen there if you're watching on YouTube, because I just posted them there and I see them above your comment as I'm looking on here for everything there for you. Now, what's one of your big goals? I always like to ask this. What's one of your big goals or big things you're searching for here in 2024? I know you're excited. You're getting ready to head to Orlando here for PodFest this coming week, right? Is this your first time going to PodFest?
It is, yeah. Which is crazy. I've been podcasting for 5 years and we're top 2% globally, and I've never been to PodFest. So I was like, okay, I guess this year's my year. Have you been before?
I've spoken at it before. Yeah, I've been a couple times.
Okay, cool.
I know Chris Cremosis and a lot of the folks. I actually probably know about a good third of the speakers. I've either been on their shows or
nice.
You'll have a great time there. Really good.
Good. Yeah, I can't wait. And then I'm like, okay, I got to make the connections to speak there next year if I'm going to go.
Right, exactly. Yeah. But that's the beautiful thing is, the events like that, especially if you're going. And this falls in line with what of making connections and using it to it's not 3 days of getting away and being Orlando. It's 3 days of making connections. And it's a great event especially now that they're showing literally all the speakers and their podcast on the website. You can literally go down there. The only thing I wish they did is they put a connection link to their social. So I've got a Google folks that I want to make a connection with, but you'll do great. I'll shoot you an email with a few folks to talk to that I think you'll love.
Awesome. That'd be amazing. Thank you.
Besides business, though, this all falls in line. We've talked about this for a lot with our relationships, our personal relationships, dating, spouses, in-laws, parents, children too, in a lot of cases, because a lot of folks are dealing with that these days. I always joke, I mean, we're the same age, although you don't look my age, you look a lot younger. All right. Is that it's a different time now with raising kids and dealing with things than it was years ago when we were growing up. It seems a lot of cases too. And it seems to be more like my sister has a son, seems she has more issues that we never dealt with in a lot of cases.
Oh yeah, definitely. Oh yeah. I would say that's true. It's wild because I have a big spectrum in ages. So at 25, 21, 18, and then 11 because blended family. So fourth is my stepson. And, it's like wild to think about the difference between what the 25-year-old experienced and the 11-year-old, and then what we did as kids. It's like different eras, different tools, different strategies needed.
So have your kids, have you applied what a lot of the things you're teaching in with your kids as they've grown and evolved?
Yeah.
Especially the older ones have gone through from the famine to the feast aspect of it too, right?
Oh yeah. It was wild at first to change myself so much. And at first, like I had a lot of issues with codependency. So I was very much like the people pleaser and kind of doormat and wanted my kids to always like me. And so when I started setting boundaries and being more intense, they were like, where did our nice mom go? And now on the other side of it, they're like, my oldest is an entrepreneur. Actually, all of my children will be entrepreneurs. Like, and they're like, they're really powerful creatures. They're like in the world doing awesome stuff. And so, it took some time to reprogram them. And I'm sure they're going to need to play with their money stories because, they learned a lot of that scarcity mindset when I was on food stamps. And especially like where I lived in Boulder, Colorado, it was like very wealthy. And I was one of the youngest moms. And so a lot of their, during spring break, their friends would be going to Europe and we would be like, let's go have a picnic at the park with some beans and rice, and so they have a lot of that ingrained in them, which has also caused them to be really powerful people. They're not entitled at all. And they're very much go-getters. So, benefits and drawbacks.
Yeah, exactly. But I think the advantages now, I can think working as a young kid and seeing my parents as entrepreneurs. Well, a lot of folks, we didn't have a lot, but we didn't know we didn't have a lot. And I think back now to the day, I'm very thankful for that. And look at my friends who had a lot that struggling as adults to survive, make things happen.
Yeah, so definitely.
This has been phenomenal.
So good.
Yeah, it's so good. We're gonna have to go back and listen to this again. But once again, it's Dr. Amanda, the Inner Power Entrepreneur Podcast. Check out the Rapid Biz Growth Roadmap and also the Law of Attraction for Entrepreneurs. It's a 7-day free trial. It is well worth. Do the whole 90 days between now and the end of March. You could be singing a different tune and cashing different checks out there.
Yes.
Making some things happen for you.
Money magnetism.
Money magnetism, exactly. Put that Einstein time to work for you. So, Dr. Amanda, thank you so much for coming on Note Night. Remember, we talk all night, but I know you've got a busy schedule to do. You come on and share some great stuff. We look forward. We're going to have you on again, I think.
Definitely. I would love it. Thank you so much for having me on. Thanks, Peter. I'm glad you had an awesome time. Thanks, everyone else who was here.
Yeah. Thank you, Marianne. Thank you, John. Thank you, Max. Thanks for everybody that's watching online there. We'll get the replay out here shortly if you missed the first part and or want to retake this and watch it again and again and again. I would too.
Yes. Repeat.
All right, Doctor. Thank you. We'll see you later. Be safe.
Bye all.
Bye.